Sergeant Reyes watched the triple canopy jungle drip condensation onto the sodden earth, the humidity, a physical weight pressing down on the remnants of Reaper 4. They had been running for 36 hours since the ambush near Landing Zone Eagle, losing 3 men and jettisoning everything but essential ammo and water. Now, they were deep in the Canyon of the Lost, an unnamed ravine in the A Shau, designated a temporary extraction point, XP Bravo 6. The silence was not peaceful. It was a tight, coiled spring, infinitely more unnerving than the firefight. Reyes knew this silence meant the enemy was waiting, watching, or worst of all, already gone, leaving only their deadly gifts behind. He signaled Sparks, the RTO, to hold all transmissions until the absolute minute, enforcing radio silence to avoid triangulation. The waiting was the hardest combat they'd faced all week. Every rustle of palm fronds, every buzz of an unseen insect felt like the precursor to a mortar round. Doc, hunched over Bravo, who had shrapnel laced along his thigh, kept whispering reassurances that sounded hollow even to his own ears. Reyes tallied their ammunition mentally. 2 grenades apiece, 3 magazines each, and a broken M60 belt that only had 20 rounds left. Survival hinged entirely on the speed of the slicks promised for 0-300. It was 0-215. 45 minutes of pure, agonizing vulnerability. Reyes felt the weight of every man's stare on his back, the desperate need for leadership mirroring his own desperate hope for the sound of approaching rotors. The jungle floor beneath them was too soft, too dark, and too silent, a natural mausoleum promising permanent interment. He ordered them to dig shallow depressions, not for cover from incoming fire, but simply to give them something productive to do, something to focus their jittery energy on while the clock dragged towards 0 hour. The tension was so thick, Reyes could taste the metallic tang of fear mixed with the jungle's decay, realizing they were not just waiting for transport, but waiting for the game of cat and mouse to end, one way or another. The duality of this moment was crushing. The immense relief of having survived the fight contrasted sharply with the certainty that the enemy was merely preparing a new, crueler trap. Sparks, the RTO, named Thomas for the perpetually skeptical look in his eyes, meticulously checked the PRC 77-1 last time. The discipline of the waiting game centered entirely on him. His job wasn't just communication. It was managing their electronic footprint in a landscape saturated with enemy intelligence. He knew the NVA had sophisticated triangulation techniques. They'd learned that lesson painfully. He kept the squelch high, the volume low, and the microphone sealed in its plastic bag. The extraction protocol was designated Code 7, requiring a burst transmission of no more than 3 seconds, confirming their beacon coordinates just as the choppers breached the final perimeter. Reyes crawled over, his uniform plastered to his skin with sweat. "Sparks, what's the gut feeling?" Reyes asked, his voice a low rasp. Sparks wiped a trickle of sweat from his temple. "Sergeant, the air is too clean. Usually, the humidity messes with the signal, gives you static. Tonight, it's crystal clear. That means somebody else is running power nearby, boosting their comms, or..." He trailed off, focusing intensely on the dial. Reyes finished the thought. Or, "They know exactly where we are and are letting us think we're safe." The paranoia was infectious. They had chosen this particular XP because a previous sweep designated it clean, a dry creek bed offering a momentary clearing in the dense jungle roof. But the jungle was never truly clean. Reyes noticed a small, almost imperceptible displacement of the moss on a nearby rock face, perhaps caused by water runoff, or perhaps a slight indication of recent human passage. He waved Doc over, pointing a single gloved finger. Doc investigated with the keen eye of a man who'd seen too many missing limbs. "Sergeant, the growth pattern is disturbed. Not a tripwire, but someone sat here. Recently, the waiting had turned into active surveillance of their own death trap. They were caged, and the only key was the specific frequency Sparks was forbidden to use until the absolute last moment." The coordinates for XP Bravo 6 were etched into the metal frame of Sparks' radio, a constant reminder of their precarious location. 14 degrees north, 107 degrees east, deep in a valley where every shadow held a threat. Sparks began the pre-ignition check, the delicate ritual before transmission. He had to be exact, or they would miss the window entirely, forcing another 12 hours of exposure. He had prepared the short burst message. Reaper 4, code 7, inbound now, all clear, holding. The all clear was the lie they had to tell to avoid panicking the pilot until they were secured. Reyes instructed Bravo, despite his leg wound, to stand watch with a broken M60 aimed vaguely toward the ridgeline. If you see anything move, anything that doesn't belong, you empty that barrel and then you dive. Reyes knew the order was futile. If the NVA launched an assault now, they were finished. But the illusion of preparedness was crucial for morale. The tension was building to an almost unbearable level, a soundless scream trapped in the tropical night air. Sparks focused on the precise frequency they were assigned, a narrow band unique to the 101st Aviation Battalion's emergency retrieval. He had noticed something peculiar during his earlier listening checks, a low, humming interference that wasn't static. It felt metallic, almost harmonic, spiking slightly whenever he tested the short-range battery power. He initially dismissed it as atmospheric distortion common in the mountains, but now, with minutes counting down, it unnerved him. It was almost like the frequency itself was resonant, being echoed back by something nearby. He tried to tune it out, but the hum persisted, a deep, infrastructural vibration buried beneath the surface noise of the jungle. It didn't sound like enemy comms. It sounded like machinery waiting to be activated. He whispered this observation to Reyes, who simply grunted. Focus on the signal, Sparks. That hum is just the valley trying to swallow us whole. But Sparks couldn't shake the feeling that the valley wasn't acting alone. It had help. The waiting culminated exactly at 0258. The low, distant thumping sound, faint but unmistakable, rolled through the canopy. Hueys, 3 of them, flying low beneath the radar profile, utilizing nap-of-the-earth techniques. Salvation was airborne. The sound intensified rapidly, changing from a vague throb to a distinct, metallic whirring that vibrated through the mud. Reyes slapped Sparks' shoulder. 3 seconds, Sparks. Do it. Sparks nodded, his heart hammering against his ribs, and flicked the transmit switch. Reaper 4, code 7, inbound now, all clear, holding. He released the switch. The radio's green light went out. Extraction confirmed. The helicopters were 30 seconds out, directly overhead. Reyes stood, waving the infrared strobe lightly toward the sound. Enough for the pilots to spot them, but not enough to illuminate the area for a potential enemy sniper. The air currents from the approaching birds began to bend the treetops, a wind of promise cutting through the heavy, suffocating atmosphere. Bravo grunted in relief, dropping his heavy weapon slightly. Doc even permitted himself a small, weary smile. This was the moment of victory, the instant they beat the jungle. But as the lead slick, Angel 1-1, began its final descent, its powerful searchlight slicing through the darkness, Sparks felt that familiar, unnatural hum from the radio surge violently. It wasn't atmospheric. It was a focused, powerful spike of electromagnetic energy directly correlated with the high-powered avionics of the landing aircraft. Before he could shout a warning, before the skids touched the earth, the very ground they stood on began to tremble violently, not from the rotor wash, but from a calculated subterranean detonation. The NVA had engineered the trap not around pressure, light, or wire, but around the energy signature of the rescue itself. A sophisticated electronic booby trap designed to trigger upon the introduction of specific U.S. military frequencies and high-powered electromagnetic fields. The low hum Sparks had detected earlier was the charging signal of a device linked directly to the main PRC 77 frequency band, lying dormant until the simultaneous high-frequency transmission, Sparks code 7, and the overwhelming electromagnetic interference, the approaching Hueys avionics, completed the circuit. It was the ultimate refinement of the waiting game. They were safe only until help arrived. The moment the signal was sent and received, the counter was activated. The initial explosion was not a mortar or a grenade. It was a shaped charge buried 6 feet down, directly beneath the center of the pre-designated LZ, designed to destabilize the terrain. Simultaneously, secondary charges, packed with high-velocity shrapnel and rusty metal, ripped through the perimeter, triggered by magnetic proximity fuses tuned to the specific alloy of the helicopter skids. The clearing erupted in a geyser of earth, metal, and light. The sound was deafening, a wet, tearing roar that instantaneously swallowed the noise of the rotors. Reyes didn't even have time to register the source of the blast. He saw a flash of blinding white light, felt a sickening, upward shove of the ground, and then the world dissolved into a chaos of flying mud and searing pain. The jungle, which had held its breath for hours, finally exhaled a massive, destructive sigh. The entire center of XP Bravo 6 vanished in an instant, a localized earthquake of high explosives. The trap was executed with chilling precision, aimed not just at the men, but at the very concept of their rescue, ensuring that the arriving birds became part of the final, fatal mechanism. Sparks was closest to the epicenter of the electromagnetic trigger, the PRC-77 still clutched in his hand. The surge of energy that detonated the primary charge coursed through the radio, set itself. His final conscious sensation was the searing heat of the radio casing melting into his palm, a silent, internal explosion preceding the external one. He watched in a final, agonizing second of clarity as the ground cracked open directly beneath Reyes. Reyes was lifted 5 feet into the air by the shockwave, his body folding unnaturally over the blast plume. Bravo, who had just lowered his guard, was caught by the secondary shrapnel from the tree line. The rusty metal tore through his torso before he could even raise his weapon. Doc, positioned slightly away and treating the wound, was spared the initial wave, but the concussion wave threw him violently against a banyan root, fracturing his spine and crushing his chest. The entire sequence, from the burst transmission to the total annihilation of the extraction zone, took less than 1.5 seconds. Sparks' headset was still functional for a millisecond after the detonation. The pilot of Angel 1-1, moments from touching down, heard a final, incomprehensible sound through the comms. Not a scream, but a distorted metallic shriek, followed by absolute, immediate dead air. The final image seared into Sparks' retina was the underside of the Huey, massive and dark, now plunging uncontrollably into the churning wreckage below, the rescue ship instantly becoming part of the debris field. The sophisticated NVA trap had ensured there would be no survivors, no witnesses, and crucially, no salvageable evidence left for immediate analysis. The waiting game had ended not with a bang of enemy engagement, but with the calculated, silent click of an electronic timer. Above the inferno, Major Caldwell, piloting the gunship Vulture 2-3, witnessed the event unfold with detached horror. He was circling high, providing top cover, watching Angel 1-1 descend into the small, dark bowl of the XP. One moment, the clearing was silent save for the reassuring chop of the rotors. The next, it was a colossal fireball. Caldwell shouted into his mic, "Angel 1-1, abort, abort," ground explosion. But the transmission was futile. Angel 1-1 was already gone, swallowed by the blast and the subsequent rotor strike as the pilot instinctively overcorrected, smashing the main rotor into the hillside. The two escort slicks, seeing the sudden, violent detonation, banked hard and ascended immediately, their pilots screaming warnings over the net about secondary explosions. Caldwell circled lower, stabilizing his gunship, peering through the smoke and particulate matter. There was nothing left to extract. The LZ was now a smoking, circular crater 30 feet wide. He could see parts of the downed Huey, its tail boom snapped, burning fiercely. But of Reaper 4, there was no recognizable sign. The precision and instantaneous nature of the destruction suggested something far beyond conventional booby trapping. This was not a claymore or a simple grenade cluster. This was an engineered event. Caldwell radioed command, his voice strained and formal, overriding the panic of the returning slicks. Vulture 2 to 3 to command. XP Bravo 6 is a confirmed kill zone. Reaper 4 and Angel 1 to 1 are unaccounted for. Presumed catastrophic loss. Repeat, catastrophic loss. Requesting immediate stand down and specialized recovery team deployment. I believe we have encountered a new, complex device. Nothing survived the blast. Nothing. He maintained the orbit, a silent, hovering witness to the enemy's mastery of tactical patience and technological counteradaptation. The silence that followed the explosion was worse than the blast itself, confirming the chilling totality of the ambush. It took 18 hours for the Specialized Recovery and Ordnance Disposal Team, led by Captain Hueys Harris, to secure the area. The delay was mandatory, necessitated by the fear of secondary, time-delayed electronic traps. Harris's team moved with painful slowness, clad in heavy protective gear, sweeping the cratered landscape with non-metallic mine detectors and electromagnetic sensors. The scene was apocalyptic. The wreckage of the Huey was melted into the churned mud, and the bodies of the 4 members of Reaper 4 were reduced to scattered, untraceable fragments. The enemy had achieved total elimination. Harris's mandate was not to find survivors, but to find the trigger. Deep within the primary blast zone, close to where Sparks had been standing, they found the fused remains of the PRC-77 radio. Its plastic casing vaporized, its internal components melted into a slag. Embedded next to it, partially protected by the deep mud, was the key to the mystery. A small, cylindrical device, approximately the size of a coffee mug, made of reinforced ceramic and brass. It was sophisticated, unlike any conventional NVA ordnance they had encountered. The device contained a delicate solenoid, a power cell, and a frequency filter tuned specifically to the 42 to 50 MHz band. The operational frequency of the PRC-77 and the specific frequency of the 101st extraction code. Harris carefully extracted the device. It was a resonance-based fuse designed to complete an electrical circuit when the target frequency reached peak power transmission, Sparks burst, and was simultaneously flooded by the electromagnetic field of a large, low-flying metal object, the Huey. The enemy hadn't needed to watch them. They had simply mined the very airwaves they relied on. The waiting game had worked in reverse. The NVA waited for the U.S. forces to attempt rescue, knowing the established protocols would trigger their layered, invisible trap. Captain Harris radioed back to command, his voice tight with professional shock. "Command, we have recovered the trigger mechanism. It confirms our suspicion. This was an engineered kill zone, not a chance encounter with ordnance. The device is a frequency-activated resonance fuse, highly sophisticated, designed to be dormant until the specific conditions of a standard U.S. extraction were met. The NVA are linking their ordnance directly to our communications infrastructure. They knew the XP, they knew the frequency, and they exploited the exact moment of relief and proximity to guarantee total annihilation. This wasn't combat, sir. This was counter-electronic warfare, disguised as a booby trap." The discovery sent a chill through the U.S. command structure. It confirmed that the enemy's intelligence had surpassed simple human observation and entered the realm of technical surveillance and counter-technology. Reyes and his squad had died, not because they were ambushed in the conventional sense, but because the mere presence of rescue, the end of their torturous wait, provided the final, necessary piece of power to set off the hidden mechanism. The ultimate irony was that their disciplined radio silence had kept them alive for hours, but the mandatory final transmission, the necessary call for salvation, had been weaponized. Harris packaged the device for immediate transport, knowing this artifact represented a critical, terrifying shift in the war. The jungle was no longer just hiding men and wires. It was hiding circuits and frequencies, turning every planned operation into a potential death sentence. The grim recovery mission found only scattered identification tags and the residual energy signature of the devastating blast. A perfect, silent kill. The echoes of Reaper 4's final, garbled radio call lingered long after the smoke cleared. For command, the last radio call became a chilling case study. The cost of predictability in a war defined by relentless adaptation. The incident forced an immediate, drastic overhaul of extraction protocols, requiring complex frequency hopping and preset electronic countermeasures. But the damage was already done. The psychological impact on the RTOs across Vietnam was immense. The instrument of communication, their only lifeline, had been perverted into a deadly switch. The story of Sergeant Reyes, Sparks, Doc, and Bravo was not one of valorous last stand, but of patient, agonizing vulnerability exploited by an unseen, technological enemy. Their wait had been interminable, but their end was instantaneous and impersonal, a function of physics and frequency. The duality of their ordeal, the desperate struggle for survival during the endless waiting, contrasted with the instantaneous oblivion that arrived with their rescue, became a silent lesson etched into the memory of every soldier operating in the A Shau. The jungle had shown them its newest trick, that sometimes the safest moment is the fight, and the most dangerous time is the lull, the space where hope is allowed to breathe, only to be extinguished by a clever, invisible fuse. The silence that followed the annihilation of Reaper 4 was the NVA's final, defiant message. They were listening, and they were adapting the rules of engagement to ensure that help, when it arrived, was merely the courier of death.